This is Frankie Kazarian, the king of TNA, and you're listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler. Keep listening, Marks.
You are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals, and welcome to another edition of the Bill Apter Seal of Approved Counted Out with Mike and Tyler. My name is Tyler, and I am joined today by one of my favorite people to talk to every year. You can listen to him and John Pollock and many others at Post Wrestling, one of my personal favorites, Wai Ting. Wai, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Always happy to be back. Apparently, due to tremendous demand. Okay, so that one person out there who messaged the boys at Counted Out about wanting a repeat waiting appearance. Well, thank you very much for that.
Well, this is it. Third time's the charm, I believe. We've had you on in the past. Always good to have you on the year-end show. And I guess let's just kind of dive right into the first topic I want to talk about, and that would be the reunion that we saw this year in AEW of Adam Copeland, formerly known as Edge, and Christian Cage. Let's get your overall vibes just on seeing them back together. I know with both of us being in Toronto, that was probably a little more special for us over on this side. But how happy were you to see that reunion finally take place after so many years?
Um, I would say like relatively happy about it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's something that was to be expected the moment Adam Copeland made his debut into the company. The only question would be like how long it would take, and like by this point, I feel like enough time has kind of passed where like maybe I don't know, like he's done enough as a singles. Certainly, I don't know how many people would have expected this sort of resurgence of Christian Cage in AEW as a totally rebranded, arguably like the best version of him as a heel that I personally I think I've seen. I might consider this to be like the favorite character I've seen from Christian, to be quite honest. And so I think the big question would have been how they would have reunited Edge and Christian with Christian doing such great work as this new father figure type of heel.
Well, and
And I
I
thought they did it well.
Yeah, so do I, because they didn't change Christian, which I
No.
loved, and they really embraced that with well, you're an asshole, but you're my asshole. I thought that was so fun, and it was really great to see like that Toronto crowd when they had that match with FTR. As soon as Christian walked out, the whole arena was chanting, "He's our asshole," and I love
Mhm.
that. I couldn't agree with you more. This is the best work that Christian has done, and that's saying a lot because he's got such a tremendous body of work as well. But you can just tell he's having so much fun with this character in AEW.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a few years now since we've had this, but like I still find I think the character work is a lot more refined than like even thinking back to like the early, like mid 2000s when he was really kind of coming into his own as a singles guy. I find this particular character well, certainly a lot more uh you know, colorful in his commentary and his insults than maybe we've seen in the past. And I think that's actually worked really well for a more, I would say, adult-oriented product in AEW. But let's not like lose sight of the fact that I think Adam Copeland has been doing really well on this entire comeback. But in AEW, I think well, he's taken a lot of risk and he's kind of paid for it in some respects, via injury. But I think he continues to really challenge himself. I would suggest like the biggest drawback though to maybe this current run are the sporadic appearances that we've
Yeah.
been seeing from him. That's really kind of killed the momentum. It feels like every time he comes back, builds up to a big thing, and then there's some big injury angle again, and where you don't hear from him. Last time we heard from him was what, like September after this
Yeah.
match, right? Beth Phoenix
Yeah.
attacked and all that. So I mean, I know he's on a limited schedule anyway. I know he's been injured a little bit throughout that period, but I mean, largely, I'm sure he's got other commitments and life to live, but it's just kind of killed the momentum, I would say, a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think he's out doing some type of a movie role right now. And the timing just feels really poor on this one because they did that big angle, like you said, with Beth Phoenix, right? And they laid her out with the spike pile driver. And it was just kind of weird how they threw it away in a backstage segment where he was just kind of like, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. Like you would think that maybe he would be out for blood here. Like you just, destroyed my wife. Like I want vengeance. So I agree. I think that was a little let the wind out of the sails a little bit after that tremendous match that they had. I want to see more of it.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, again, when you're making these absences multiple times a year, you kind of have to be a little bit more creative with reasons for why somebody's going. And, they wanted to build a big heat angle, obviously, just to get back to Ed and Christian versus FTR. And they tried, but it is very apparent that, this is not his only priority in life, wrestling. And of course that's fine. It just it leaves a bit more of a dissatisfying taste for at least a story. But in the meantime, I think they've done a great job with FTR.
I would be a little more worried about it if it wasn't, Adam Copeland, Christian, and FTR because they are also talented enough that even though no one's really thinking about it anymore, when they do decide to revisit this, I think they're going to be able to pick right up and generate that interest again. But it's definitely a lost momentum for sure right now.
Like in the meantime, I mean, we haven't seen Christian either.
Yeah.
Copeland's absence has also meant Christian's absence, and I just when you're telling me that Cope and Cage are reuniting AEW, where like the tag division really thrives, there's so many dream matches I would have just loved to have been able to see, and maybe we'll still get that. But these guys aren't really getting younger, and I just kind of wish they could get some of these big matches built already.
Well, you mentioned dream matches. What would you like to see for the future with CNC as they're calling themselves now, Cope and Christian?
Well, for me, I mean, you name it, like the Bucks, I feel like would be at the top of my list. I
Yeah.
mean, other than that FDR match, which we already got and we'll probably get again, um, an Edge and Christian versus Young Bucks match. I feel, I mean, that's two legendary tag teams here. Um, then you just kind of like, I mean, Jurassic Express, just kind of given all the history with Luchasaurus and Cope and Christian, that's a very sensible match. I'd love to see as well. What about yourself?
I mean, I would like to see maybe Jet Speed get in there with them. I've been a tremendous fan of Speedball Mike Bailey for many years, and getting to see him, do what he's doing now on the stage is incredible. And I think there'd be a lot of fun to have with anybody in the Don Callis family because Don Callis and Cope and Christian would just be so entertaining together.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. There really is no shortage of incredible tag teams, but yeah, it's about how many dates we can get with them, I suppose.
Absolutely. And of course, before we move on to the next topic here, we have to talk about just how incredible the FTR and Cope and Christian match was in Toronto. I thought that was in contention for a long list of many of the best matches of the year this year.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like I have to kind of do a bit of a refresher with a lot of the wrestling I've seen just because the quality of everything has been so high. And it's really hard for me to keep track in my mind of like all the big ones. But that probably like I remember that being a very satisfying match. But on an AEW show to be the match of the night, it's a very tall task.
100%.
But I do remember it being a very satisfying one.
Well, let's hit some rapid fire points here, just of some of the more maybe less talked about great moments of the year because at this point we've all given our opinions and talked about John Cena and his tap out and all that stuff. But there are a couple of really fun moments that I've enjoyed watching develop this year, and I want to start off with the evolution of Natty Neidhart and this new dungeon character that we're seeing, and we're slowly starting to see that roll into television now in the WWE. How have you enjoyed personally seeing this Natty Neidhart evolution?
So it looks, I'll say it looks promising. I mean, we haven't really seen the debut on WWE main roster proper. We've seen, of course, her in AAA, Bloodsport, which I feel like is, more of like the genesis of style of that sort of character. I think it's incredibly promising. I think In ring, like from what I've seen, I feel like there's some added aggression, certainly in comparison to like how she perhaps used to wrestle. But I'd still, I'm still not 100% sold on it because I feel like I've seen better examples of this type of shooter character done by other wrestlers. But I'm, I mean, ultimately, how she is portrayed on the main roster is going to be the biggest definer. I like the look. I like her coming out with like an entourage, like
Hmm.
it's an MMA fight. I love the vignettes with Maxine, and her being portrayed as just like sort of like very tough coach. I love all of that. But I guess I'm optimistic, but at the same time, mm, you know, she she doesn't strike me as like the type of personality that can drive fear, at least not from her previous work. Like whether or not she could be that person in real life, maybe she could, but I guess like my mental image of Natty Neidhart thus far has been like what I've seen on the main roster predominantly, what I've seen on Total Divas, and she
Hmm.
appears to be one of the most bubbliest, like most like I think friendly people that's out there. And so, can she pull off mean instructor that you should be afraid of? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I
No,
look forward to
absolutely.
seeing it.
Absolutely. I was really impressed and I really bought into her like kind of debut of this character at the Bloodsport at WrestleMania weekend. I would be very interested to see what the WWE's version looks like because obviously she's not going to be out there, yelling F you and giving the finger to everybody and coming out to Rage Against the Machine. So, like, I agree with you. It's kind of up to the WWE's version of how far they're going to let this go and push it, right?
So much of it, I think, will be dependent on Maxine. How much the audience like will feel sympathy for Maxine whenever Natalia inevitably, attacks her or turns on her. It's going to require, I think, quite the beatdown, and it's going to require a hell of a performance from Natalia. So we'll see
100%.
if she can pull it off.
Let's shift gears and let's talk about some of the Money in the Bank cash-ins that we saw this year. We saw Seth Rollins cash in at SummerSlam. We saw Naomi cash in at the Evolution pay-per-view. What's your take on the Money in the Bank concept in the year 2025 as we move into 2026? Do you think this has run its course? Do you think it's still entertaining? Where's your head at with this?
I still think it's entertaining. I mean, the answer to both of those questions is yes. Like it is tiring. At the same time, it still elicits a big reaction whenever it happens, right? And I still think it's a plot device that is ultimately effective.
Mhm.
Like, Naomi winning the championship, I thought made for a really strong moment. Same with Seth Rollins, I suppose, although that one may be a little bit more predictable depending on what news sources you're checking out because many of us might have speculated that already. Still, made for I would say a big moment to close the show, a shocking title change, typically, a good tactic for a heel to launch a heel's, uh um championship reign. So I think the calendar year would feel empty without it. Like if the
Mhm.
suggestion is to get rid of it altogether. But what I do love is that AEW has gotten away from doing the gimmick. They've at least instituted the policy saying that what you need at least a week ahead of time in order to cash in your thing, which we just saw MJF do. So I like the fact that like it's become such a WWE thing now that an AEW is not doing the same thing.
Mhm.
Yet again, I personally don't mind it so much, with the WWE keeping it. I would love to see maybe some alterations. Maybe like WWE can institute something similar that says you have X amount of dates, or maybe they shorten the window to cash in. Maybe they say um you you can only cash in with this sort of stipulated amount of time. You have to give warning. I don't know, but maybe
Maybe,
some
maybe,
variance
maybe
attached to it.
something like for every month you hold it, you have to defend it once a month or something different like that,
There's
right?
a good idea. Yeah,
There you go. See,
absolutely. Hmm.
this could air on the next season of WWE Unreal Way for all we know. This conversation right here, we could see
Mm,
clipped in there. We're going to be right in the writers' room there.
I yeah, yes, 100% yes.
I like this year's Money in the Bank because I just feel like it felt more important this year than it has in many other years. I felt they put them on two really strong, believable people that kind of generated my interest back into it. I thought they were two great moments of the year as well. But I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about one more moment here before we start to wrap up. We saw the unfortunate passing of Sabu this year, and he weeks after his last match, which was just an incredible spectacle, his last match. And you had the ECW kind of vibe throwback to it. Just kind of your memories of and legacy of Sabu overall, because I really think he's one of those guys that he changed so much and he did it on such a different scale that he never, I don't want to say doesn't get the recognition that he deserves, but he's definitely not mentioned as much as he should be for changing the game.
Yeah, yeah. Mm, I I mean, for me, I'll remember Sabu as somebody who was able to bring in a very sort of like punk rock type of like recklessness to his in-ring performances, and that's, like you're not necessarily thinking of him as a gymnast, right? Like he's not a graceful performer, and I think that was part of the excitement
Hmm.
ultimately. And we have to kind of keep that in mind sometimes, especially in judging professional wrestling. Often we might judge it like it's a gymnastics routine. How perfect did this triple flip land? And if it wasn't perfectly landed, well, does that mean the match was bad? I don't think so. I don't think so. Like in MMA fighting, in actual sports, especially combat sports, you'll see haymakers, you'll see like just like wild punches, and often that just might be as a part of a person's style. And especially when it comes to professional wrestling, where I would hate if everybody just had picture perfect technique.
Hmm.
Um, I think he introduced like something completely, like he had great looking stuff, but of course, like a lot of it didn't always land, and I almost feel like that in and of itself is part of the character. He'll go for shit even if he's not 100% sure of it. But he won't hesitate, and he'll just like do it anyway. That was part of the, I would say, unspeakable energy of some of the matches. Um, and especially, I think like I wasn't a regular ECW viewer at the time. I only kind of like absorbed a lot of Sabu through clips and things like that. Um, so I almost feel like you really had to have been there within the context of other professional wrestling that you were watching, certainly from like WWE at the time, which looked nothing like that, to really, really appreciate just how incredible and innovative he was at the time.
Absolutely, that's very well said for sure. Let's just move on really quickly. We are coming into Royal Rumble season. A lot of names this year, a lot of people are talking about. Do you have any early predictions on who you think might be some of the favorites for the Royal Rumble this year?
In terms of favorites, I certainly think, again, depending on what happens. Well, we don't exactly know because he's not really lined up for anything yet. But I mean, they've been teasing Gunther versus CM Punk very hard. CM Punk is the current champion. Does he lose it to Braun Breaker on January the 5th? I suppose that would dictate a lot as well. There are a lot of moving pieces in play, but I would look at the present time towards Gunther being one of the heavy favorites to either win Rumble or Chamber to head into one of those WrestleMania main events, most possibly against CM Punk.
Hmm.
Um, other surprises. I feel like there might be a lot of talk about Chris Jericho. Don't don't know exactly what that contract when it might be due, but if it is a end of beginning of January type of thing, the Rumble would be a perfect place to see somebody like that. Um, Other favorites, trying to think like on the women's side of things. With Jade as champion. I wonder if Bianca Belair is finally ready.
Yeah,
Like
that'd be
she might
great.
come back.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of history there with those two.
Yeah. Um, who else? What are you thinking?
I mean, you've got Roman Reigns hovering around. I think there's a lot of interest for a Roman and Punk match, possibly at WrestleMania as well. I like Gunter as well. I mean, if we're pulling the trigger on Gunter and what he's done with Cena and Goldberg this year, like yeah, it's kind of like what they did with Brock Lesnar when he beat the Undertaker's streak. They just went all in and had him crush Cena and take the belt. I wouldn't hate to see that. And I'll,
Hmm.
I'll give a little dark horse pick, and maybe this is just a sentimental favorite. I just think there could be a really great story told of Sami Zayn chasing the one title that's eluded him for a long time. I don't know if it fits in for the Rumble. Maybe that could be like a chamber thing. I don't even really see it being the year for him. Maybe this year that could be a next year thing. But I would like to see Sammy do something this year to try to chase that title that's eluded him.
Yeah, that would certainly be a dark horse pick, like much in the way like Jey Uso might have
Mm.
been for a lot of people. Nobody really expected that one. Would they be like on board enough with Zayn that they would put him in a WrestleMania title match? Notice how I said title match and not necessarily main event. You
Yeah.
could be in a title match and not necessarily be at the top of the card. But I would love to see it. I feel like he's been due for quite a while. I would also say though, I almost worry that like they missed the boat on it, you know? Like
Yeah.
I feel like the time would have been several years back, if not even earlier this year, but he's so talented that of course he can get there. I really thought like with Jey Uso being champion, that would have been the way to launch Zayn as perhaps even a heel or at least a
Mhm.
jealous, friend to get him to the title picture, but they didn't execute there.
Yeah, I was surprised at that as well. Like they had him kind of come out the night after and they embraced in the ring and
Hmm.
so much history there. I think that I don't want to say it's a missed opportunity because I'm sure that is something that could be revisited, but I definitely think it would have given Jey Uso's title run a big shot in the arm there.
Yeah, yeah, agreed.
Well, the last question I'll ask you, Wei, time flies when you're having fun here, but let's talk about just kind of some of the MVPs of the year for each company, the WWE, AEW, and TNA Wrestling, some of their top performers that really just stepped up and excelled this year.
So, I I have certainly this thought more so about AEW because I think it's been such a great year for them, both in ring and in terms of just like storytelling. And I think a lot of the conversation this year will be surrounding like an Adam Page, um, and rightfully so. But to me, like the MVP consistently throughout the year has been John Moxley. I mean, he didn't necessarily start off the year great with a lot of like fan dissatisfaction towards the Death Rider story, but I more so kind of like attributed that to poor booking of these finishes of these matches. I think as a promo, he's been so incredibly consistent throughout the entire year. Um, I think in terms of intensity in ring, he is just spectacular. Um, and he was the Thanos to your whatever you want to call him, like Tony Stark in Adam Page, for All In, the end game of the season. And I thought he played a tremendous villain in the lead up to that entire thing. But I've been more so shocked at how great he's been doing post All In, where he's gone on this like, well, he had the feud with Darby Allin, ended up losing that, gave us some spectacular matches in that time as well. But then since then has kind of like been telling this, like I would say relatively subtle, well, not so subtle at times, story of collapse and him basically having to like clutch onto the leadership of the Death Riders and the confidence of his stablemates. Again, they haven't spelled it out explicitly for us because I think, to me, I still have a question of whether or not the Death Riders will be turning with Moxley and sticking around with him. But I certainly think they're playing with it, playing with our expectations about whether or not we when the turn is coming, whether or not it's coming at all. If you're watching the Continental Classic, he's basically a baby face now, turning, I would say, somehow midway through the tournament. Will be interesting to see if that sticks post tournament, but I want to see how they stick the landing on that one. In ring, I think again he's just been so great, so consistent, but it's the storytelling that really takes it over the edge for me. So for me, I think Moxley is the MVP of the company in AEW. WWE, maybe a bit harder to pick. Like when I think about 2025, I mean, the focus really has been on John Cena and less so on a Cody Rhodes. Um, less so on a CM Punk. So, you know, certainly less so on Roman Reigns, who I think has kind of like it feels like it barely was that much of a presence this year.
Mhm.
So without all of those, like who stands out? Who?
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I would maybe just give the nod to Cena. I think especially the last 6 months of the year, John Cena was incredible. The heel turn, say what you want about it. It was a great moment. Some people liked it, some people didn't like the execution, but I think it's hard to go against Cena this year. And the work he did with Dominic Mysterio towards the end of the year was phenomenal. Big rub for him. Gunter is on a different level now, so I think WWE, I'd give the nod to John Cena.
Yeah, I think that's a very good choice. Overall, certainly when you're talking about business, he was a major difference maker. I'll just say for me, just as a fan, maybe due to personal preference, I thought the year was tremendous for Io Sky as a
Yes.
confirmation of her. Like, remember starting off this year, I didn't even picture her in the title picture. Like, I thought it would be Bella and Bianca, and that would be it. Had that great match at WrestleMania, and then just from that point on, just like they really made her feel like a focal point. And I will also add to that, I think making great strides with Kyrie and Asuka as storytellers without necessarily having an English like speaking manager next to them. Like they themselves have been able to tell these really wonderful stories towards the latter half of the year, just all on their own. And I think it's been a great year for all of them.
Yeah, I'll also give a shout out to Chelsea Green. I just think everything she does is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Tony Storm as well. We can't forget
Yeah,
her.
of course,
Yeah.
of course. And then for TNA, I just throw two names out there that I think have been really important to the company this year, and I would say the Hardy Boys and Leon Slater for me. They've really Leon especially. There's just this aura about him that they if I'm TNA, I'm locking that guy up for as long as I can, and I'm putting the rocket on him. I think with TNA, their product is so good. I really do enjoy the work that they do, but I think they're really struggling to find a face of the company. You've got your Mike Santana that they've kind of elevated. They tried it with Steve Macklin a little bit, who I think there's still a lot of potential there for him. The Hardy Boys are obviously, the Hardy Boys. They're always going to be a focal point. They had Joe Henry earlier this year, but now with him gone, I think there's this gap. And with AMC coming up, I mean, the first thing I would want to see when I'm turning on a channel is Leon Slater and that incredible finishing move he's doing.
Right. Yeah. I wonder how long they could lock him up for
Yes.
because it almost feels like like I mean he was one of the featured names at Saturday night's main event and arguably stole the show in that particular match over
Mhm.
even a Javon Evans. So I personally don't think he's long for TNA. But I don't disagree. I think it's really tough for any company to find that face, especially when you're almost like in a position where you're kind of playing feeder system for WWE. This is something NXT has to constantly struggle with, right?
Mhm.
And even tougher when you're TNA. So we'll see how they navigate that.
Absolutely. Wade, this has been a great chat. Time flies. Like I said, when you're having fun, it's always great to catch up with you. Maybe we don't wait a full year this time. Maybe we get you to come back on for the halfway check-in. But before we let you
Yeah.
go, please tell the people everything they need to know about post wrestling, where they can find you guys, where they can subscribe for the Patreons and all that stuff.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast, wherever you are listening to it, you might be able to find Post Wrestling. Simply type in POST space wrestling. We do post shows after every Raw, Dynamite, SmackDown, and AEW and WWE pay-per-views. Those are all of our free feed contributions, whether it be on the YouTube or also on your various podcast platforms. If you really like us and want to take things to a next level and maybe get us almost every single day, well, consider signing up to our Patreon, postwrestlingcafe.com.
Absolutely. You guys have a great team there. I've said it many times in the show, but you and John are huge inspirations to Mike and myself. And you've always been so great with us. I'll say it time and time again. If you ever need the most credible news sources for professional wrestling, if you see it on Post Wrestling, you can bet your bottom dollar it's true. John and yourself do incredible research. Always very great to catch up with you.
Thank you very much, Tyler. And yeah, all the best to you and continued success with Count It Out.